Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a good Friday. It is Friday, August 19th, 3:32 p.m. Eastern. And I appreciate you all joining along. Thanks for the likes, the thumbs, the smiles, the shared memories. So we finally got our rising wedge breaking bearish convincingly. And we finally have some convincing broader stock market daily consolidation underway. So this is the NASDAQ currently potentially closing under daily EMA 12 for the first time in roughly a month and looking towards weekly consolidation in the broader market as we are seeing weekly consolidation underway in metals, gold and silver, in crypto now, of course, and setting up for the possibility that we're closing near the low of the week. So next week, first thing, we only need a little bit of downside, and then the pattern of a higher low every week will break, and that weekly consolidation will be underway. So that's what we're watching here in the short term for the broader market, and we are still in a daily uptrend. We'll be watching for the potential that this pullback gets big enough to then create space for the potential of a downtrend, but for now, it's the hourly downtrend that is our guide. And it's keeping the bears in control. A little bit of a bounce attempt here into the end of the day. We need a 5-minute uptrend if we're going to believe that the bulls can have any follow through on this bounce attempt. And we've got 25 minutes left in the trading day. So the Bitcoin divided by NASDAQ chart is showing us weakness. Right now we are testing the lowest level that we've seen on this drop, which is also the lowest level in 18 months. Which means that in this moment, we are essentially the weakest that Bitcoin has been comparative to the NASDAQ in 18 months. And curious how that compares to the S&P 500. Same deal. Approaching, not quite as weak, but almost. So pretty much the weakest we've been comparative to the stock market in 18 months. We know that the bounce that we've seen, retracement size-wise, is not comparable between the two. The percentage gain is obviously bigger in Bitcoin as crypto has more volatility. But if we're looking at the retracement size on this bounce, we have retraced 45 to 50% in stocks. And we know Bitcoin is not even on the radar with its retracement size from the highs. We're looking at, it's not even measurable. I mean, it definitely is measurable, but it's 10% or so. Maybe 20 at most. But bottom line is much, much, much weaker bounce than what stocks are seeing. So just have to call it like it is. That's what's going on right now. And we're going to continue watching how long we stay relative weaker than the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. This is our daily rising wedge. And over the past couple of days, I've been saying, I would have expected this bear break to have been more convincing. Where's the volume? Where's the follow through? And it's making me a little bit less sure. I'm definitely favoring bearish more than bullish because of the weekly time frame and knowing weekly consolidation is inevitable. But this is the candle that is needed for the convincing confirmation of the pattern. And you can see the volume with 4 hours left to go. We're going to have, at least on Coinbase, and I'm sure it's the case across the sector, but you're going to see the highest daily volume in a month on that bear break. And all these other names that had the rising wedges, FTT and Sol, they're all following through nice and convincingly. So the bears clearly have control of the short term now as far as hourly and 4-hour downtrends. And weekly consolidation is underway across the board. When we last checked in, what's today, Friday? We checked in Wednesday. We last checked in and we could list off 10 plus altcoins that already had weekly consolidation underway. And so every single one that started weekly consolidation then just increased the probability that Bitcoin and everybody else would as well. And so that's now where we stand. We have weekly consolidation underway. So this is definitely a short-term win for the bears. And now you're going to hear about, we're headed to fresh lows for the next couple of weeks or however long. And maybe we are. There's 3 scenarios that are going to play out. The first scenario is nobody hits a fresh low, and we set a weekly higher low holding our fear lows from a couple months ago. Scenario number 2 everybody breaks the low and crypto re-enters a lot of significant weakness. And scenario number 3, Bitcoin breaks the low and the weakest altcoins break the low, but other altcoins that bounce more significantly do not. And if Bitcoin breaks 17 and drops down to 16 and then bounces, that's a possible scenario. Because if we look at how some of these names are comparing, and we'll just use Bitcoin and Ethereum because that's the easiest, percentage-wise, it's again a night and day difference where from where we stand right now, or from this low, Bitcoin has to drop 17% to break to fresh lows. And Ethereum has to drop 47%. So again, it's not even comparable. It's a very, very different setup. And Ethereum has not started weekly consolidation yet. I'm anticipating that it likely will join everybody else, at least eventually. But again, there's a scenario where Bitcoin breaks the lower lows, but the stronger altcoins that bounce much more significantly still form a weekly higher low. And we're watching for that possibility as well. And in my opinion, if we get that possibility, that's where we're going to see the most confusion out of traders in the crypto space. If some names are breaking bear, but not everybody. Of course, when everybody's doing everything together in one way, that's when things are more clear. But those are the only 3 things that are going to happen from here. So what do we gauge now? How do we know? How do we determine probabilities? The more days that we see like this with volume, the more likely we're heading to fresh lows. We're not heading to fresh lows without the big bear volume, and this is the big bear volume. So bears now have control of all the time frames. We have an hourly bounce underway, and I am trading this hourly bounce in Ethereum. I'll talk about that in just a second. Bitcoin just dropped to a fresh lower low, lacking some follow through. So now we've got a rising wedge potential shaping up, where we've got a little downtrend support line. We can draw a downtrend resistance line here. So maybe a falling wedge is shaping up to try and get a more convincing 4-hour bounce going, because the 4-hour RSI is in the teens. One note about RSI, and I'm going to do a live stream with Big Cheds mid-September to talk about this very in depth, but you cannot treat RSI levels the same. The number one factor is, what is the trend? So you can't treat hourly and 4-hour RSI in a daily uptrend, in a weekly bounce, the same as you treat hourly and 4-hour RSI in a daily downtrend in weekly consolidation. It's almost like it's a different instrument. It's obviously the same instrument, but it's a completely different environment. And context is what matters the most. And the context is, what is the trend? So hourly and 4-hour RSI right now mean very little for me. And some traders looking for 4-hour oversold bounces, yesterday or the day before, my response was, knowing that weekly consolidation is on the table here, I don't really like going for 4-hour oversold bounces, because if weekly consolidation is going to get underway, then those 4-hour RSI levels are going to get real extended to the downside, or could get real extended to the downside, which they obviously have. So daily uptrend is key if you're going to have confidence buying shorter term oversold RSI levels. And now that weekly consolidation is underway, this is now when we're shifting back to, all right, I'm paying attention to the 12-hour RSI. I'm paying attention to the daily RSI. And we're watching for daily oversold conditions at this point. So this is the kind of scenario where, to entice me to play a bounce, you need to line up a bunch of time frames all crushed at the same time. And so the reason that I was interested this morning in scaling in for a bit of a bounce play was because the 4-hour RSI was in the teens, the hourly RSI was in the teens, and the 12-hour RSI was just getting oversold. I was waiting for the 12-hour oversold RSI to line up as well. And so for me, I was being picky and saying, if the 12-hour RSI gets oversold and the 4 and the hourly and the 15-minute are all crushed as well, then I'm going to start scaling in. And so I made a couple entries in Ethereum in the 1680s this morning, and then exited a quarter of that position in the 17 teens. We rejected from hourly EMA 12 resistance, and now I am letting this hourly trend change attempt play out here. And by exiting a quarter of the position, I'm now down to a much more, I'm down in size and I'm down in I've lowered my cost basis. My break-even point at this point is now in the 1670s. And so that just makes me a lot more comfortable. And because of where the 4-hour RSI levels are at, this is a potential 4-hour bear flag for Ethereum. So because it's cooling off the RSI, that makes me a lot less likely to just hold the position and then keep averaging down. Because as soon as you bounce and form a bear flag on one time frame, the conditions that had me in the trade, which is all RSI levels lining up oversold, those conditions are no longer the case. And so my reason for being in the trade starts to diminish. So I'm still giving this a bit of a chance to play out. I'm watching to see if when the stock market closes here in 20 minutes, do we get a little bit of a relief rally because we don't have the weakness of the stock market adding to the downward pressure. But Bitcoin's got a clear hourly lower high pattern. If we break the hourly lower highs, we zoom out and scout a 4-hour lower high. If we break the 4-hour lower highs, we zoom out and scout a 12-hour lower high. And again, we're just playing the zoom out game and we're watching our trends and we're watching our EMA resistances. So Bitcoin, hourly EMA 12 and hourly lower highs are what we care about in the short term. And if that changes, it'll be the 4-hour EMA 12 and the 4-hour trend that we will be caring about at that point. We know that for most individual names here, the most likely result of these bounces are lower highs. We're going to scout a 12-hour lower high to be the result of this bounce. We're going to scout a daily lower high to be the result of the next bounce. So that's what bears are looking for, and bears are going to utilize RSI as well. So look at the 5-minute RSI. Where did we just top out? Again, it's the exact same. We just had a big bear breakdown. Bears are just waiting. First 5-minute overbought conditions, scouting an hourly lower high with hourly EMA 12 resistance. Great. Bears are in, and they get multiple percent of follow through to the downside. You can treat the back burner the exact same way. If we had just broken out to 30,000 and we were pulling back to hourly EMA 12 in 5-minute oversold conditions, bulls look to buy that dip. It's the exact opposite. And so you can also use that for profit taking. So if I'm playing a bounce, I know that I'm watching EMA 12 resistance as a target for profit taking, but I can use RSI as well. If 5-minute RSI is hitting 70 for the first time on a bounce, that can be an area where I look to take profit off the table. So utilize the RSI in the opposing direction when the trend shifts. Weekly bounce, RSI, bulls using it for dip buying, and now weekly consolidation, bears using the RSI for their guide. Bitcoin needs a 5-minute trend change at the moment for any kind of bounce follow through, and then it's all about 21.7 thousand, the high of the initial bounce. And so here's that scenario. Bitcoin dropped down to an hourly lower low, and Ethereum did not. So again, I'm watching for the possibility that that happens on the weekly time frame. And as far as which do I feel is most likely, I would probably say if I had to choose, and fortunately I don't have to choose, and I don't have to put money on something that I'm not sure about, but if I did, I would probably choose a Bitcoin bear break and a bunch of alts holding support as the more likely scenario. But that doesn't mean we can't tighten up and putter around for a while first. Meaning, what if we pull back here as we have been, and then we get, what if Bitcoin gives us a weekly higher low at, say, 20,000, and then we bounce and fail at 24 and then roll over? That's a possibility as well. The only thing that I'm confident about for a name like Ethereum is I'm scouting a weekly higher low from here. I'm confident in that weekly higher low being the most likely scenario. Does that mean the bottom's in? I can't say that. We would have to confirm a weekly trend change. Because again, we can set that weekly higher low, fail the recent high, and then roll over. We can tighten up and then break bear. So preparing for that to be a possibility as well. The dominance chart, surprisingly, the dominance chart is still really weak. And that shows me that Bitcoin had a big flush down, and that was a harder drop than many alts. When was that big hourly candle on Bitcoin last night? That was 2 a.m. And so the dominance chart at 2 a.m. was dropping, which shows us Bitcoin dropping harder than alts. And now on this bounce attempt, the alts are bouncing more significantly than Bitcoin. So the dominance chart bounced a little bit on the initial pullback, but then on that big flush down, Bitcoin dropped harder and the alts are bouncing harder, which is giving us the dominance chart showing us it's at its lows. So Ethereum tightening range, trying to set up an hourly trend change to the bulls. We would have to break the high of the bounce of 1726 to confirm that trend change. And then we would zoom out and scout the 4-hour lower high. I would look to exit some more of my bounce trade, looking for the 4-hour lower high, maybe 15-minute RSI hitting 70. I scale out some more. Maybe it's 4-hour EMA 12 resistance. So I'm either going to stop out on a bear flag, giving some wiggle room, or I'm going to look to sell some more partial position into this bounce. So real quick to summarize, let's look at ETH BTC first, then we'll summarize, then we'll look at some alts. So ETH BTC is still holding really strong. Daily uptrend still. So this is showing us that Ethereum is holding on way better. And if the daily uptrend remains, that's a huge win for the Ethereum bulls. If we lose the daily uptrend, we're going to look for a weekly higher low with a lot of space. But for now, the daily uptrend is intact. And the fact that we haven't broken that low during this weakness is notable to me. And again, you can look at it and say, well, the merge is a fundamental event and there's more people willing to buy this dip in Ethereum because of that. And that is probably the case. So again, real quick to summarize, we're in a scenario right now where bears are back in action. Bears are looking for overbought RSI levels on shorter term time frames. Bears are looking for 4-hour lower highs, 12-hour lower highs, daily lower highs, depending on whether they're patient or aggressive, or their trading style, whether they're day trading or swing trading. Bulls. All right, so what are bulls looking for? Well, only bulls that love playing oversold bounces are doing anything right now. A patient bull is watching for the first indication that a weekly higher low would be shaping up would be a 12-hour trend change back to the bulls. That doesn't mean the weekly higher low is set. That means we have enough of a shift of momentum where that's possibly our weekly higher low. So a patient bull is going to wait for bulls to regain some trends to give us a support level that we can have some confidence in and say that's either the weekly higher low and I'll have a good entry for the potential that bulls can change the weekly trend and keep this bounce going, or I'm wrong, that is not the weekly higher low and I'll stop out. So a patient bull is waiting for some trend changes to develop to have confidence in a support level that is being established. The aggressive bulls are playing the weakness on these oversold bounces, but again, only if that's your trading style that you enjoy, like myself and so many others who have learned alongside me. And if we bounce from here, I will no longer, the next thing I'll be waiting for is daily oversold, and I'll need daily, 12-hour, 4-hour, hourly, 15-minute, all real beat up if I'm going to enter a bounce play in the face of weakness. And we've got the YouTube video, if you haven't seen it yet, most of you have. Chart Guys Crypto Breakdowns. How I Trade Crypto Breakdowns breaks down exactly what I'm talking about a lot more in depth. What's the title? How I Trade Crypto Bounces, not breakdowns. But the breakdown comes before the bounce. So watch that video for pretty much more in depth about what I just talked about. We're watching retracement sizes to help us determine probabilities as well. So at this point, how much of this bounce has Bitcoin given back? 17.5 up to 25. We've given back 50%. So a tightening weekly range is absolutely a possibility with where we stand right now. If we drop down another 10%, then bears start to gain significant favor. And again, you can go through this with all the different altcoins and see who's stacking up is stronger and weaker just based on retracement sizes here. Who's given back more of the bounce, who's given back 50% plus, and who's given back 382 or less. And so we know Ethereum has given back 382 or less. And again, if you want to just go down your list and determine who's stronger and who's weaker, this is a simple way to do it. And you can categorize that. A little bit of hindsight, Link USDT, the red flag was increasing bear volume on the daily. And it wasn't a ton of bear volume in itself, but the fact that it was increasing is notable to us because that's an initial little red flag. If you're a bull looking for a daily high or low, wanting to hold daily EMA 12 support, you want to see decreasing bear volume on consolidation. So we couldn't look at that and say we're about to dump, but we could look at that and say, man, that's not ideal. Maybe I am going to forgo trying to play for a daily high or low here. How much has Link now retraced? Over 50%, so more like 60%. So again, just a bit weaker. GMT, big pullback. GMT was one of the lead bears that we were keeping an eye on as this rising wedge took its sweet time to play out and was ideally looking for the bearish entry here. We got one more push up before rolling over. Sol was the other one. Another way to compare is, of course, looking at our BTC pairings. You know, which BTC pairings are looking weaker? LTC, BTC, still holding on, surprisingly. BNB, BTC, also still looking fine on the weekly. We know the Binance weekly retracement is certainly not significant at this point. Still 382. Could Binance be a bull flag? Generally, I like to see bull flags coming after uptrends, but it's a big enough bounce where we could say, you know, if this were to be a local bottom, and that bounce is already way stronger. 4-hour inside bars breaking bull. But we can say that, you know, if Binance bulls can change the 4-hour trend here back in their favor, we're going to zoom out and scout a daily lower high, but it will be possible that a weekly bull flag is on the table. We would need to see broader market, in my opinion, stocks would need to head to higher highs on the bounce as well for that to play out. But it is just a possibility. It's not the most likely scenario for me, but definitely something that is on the table as a possibility to be paying attention to. But again, look at those retracements because we have some names that are so much stronger and some names that are so much weaker. Mana didn't do very well on this bounce. Retracement size, a bit over 50%. But right now, Ethereum, Binance, I guess the meme coins are in their own world a little bit because they had that pump first. Atom, is Atom still holding on well? On the weekly, yeah. So I'd put those names as some of the stronger. Thanks for posting the link. If Bitcoin does keep selling off, yes, the more fear spreads, the more bears. I mean, just like we look on bounces for laggards, the bears will look for laggards as well. So we look for bull laggards on bounces when our leader, whether it's the broader stock market or Bitcoin, continues to bounce and show confidence and continues to hold up. And we say, all right, well, this name hasn't run. And people throw their money there, and then it gets a pop. We saw that with Phil, and we saw that with a bunch of other altcoins that were weaker and not doing a whole lot. And they were lower cap altcoins. So it's the opposite. So for bears, if Bitcoin bears keep control, daily lower high and lower low, then they're going to look, well, this name hasn't pulled back as much, and I'm going to short Binance. So yes, that's a good point. If Bitcoin bears keep control and confirm daily downtrends, and that's the next thing from here. I mean, really a 2-day time frame. I talked about in the last live stream how the 2-day time frame is a bit more clear than the daily, and we've clearly lost the uptrend. So now the question is, can bears confirm the 2-day downtrend? Because what has happened now with this candle is like a big little reset. And it's just, okay, boom, stops have triggered. You know, the longs that were going to protect their profit on this bounce have stopped out. And the shorts that were going to go aggressive for this weekly consolidation, they have their positions. So now the reset has taken place. The scales were like this, supply and demand. Demand was exceeding supply for weeks. And then towards the top, it started to do this and balance out as our bull break started to lack follow through. And then today it went like this. And so now the question is, how long does it stay like this? Do we form a 2-day lower high and lower low? Or in other scenarios, the quick reset of the scales mark a bottom. And that's the kind of scenario where you have significant cash on the sidelines saying, all right, well, here's my chance. I missed the initial bounce and now I get in. And you have everybody that was going to short is already in positions. And that's one factor about that rising wedge taking so long to form. Bears had tons of time to establish positions. So I'm wondering how many bears are going to be left on the daily bounce to then take a short. But we'll be watching retracement sizes and all that. But 2-day lower high and lower low, if that confirms, will significantly increase the probabilities that we're heading to lower lows for me. All right, I'm reading the chat room now. Market is closing. Just checking real quick how things are closing. Still weak overall. We didn't dump into the close, but bears definitely walking away in the stock market with the win today after not having much in terms of a win over the last couple of weeks. So how is sentiment different? Remember last Friday, we closed at the high for stocks, and then we had a bit of bullish activity Friday into Saturday for crypto. Well, now we're closing with some weakness. So obviously a completely different sentiment setup into the weekend. And Bitcoin is still struggling to even confirm a 5-minute uptrend. So bears are still in full short-term control here. CRV USDT, nice bounce. So 4-hour bounce is underway. We're watching EMA 12 resistance. We're watching retracement size. The uptick in bull volume is a good sign. Is this a big enough bounce to create space for a 4-hour trend change back to the bulls? We don't know yet. That's what we're watching for. What is our retracement size? Again, for every individual coin that you're looking at, these are the things you're looking at. Look at the 4-hour, engage the bounce. We know we're just looking for that lower high. Look at the weekly, engage the retracement size at this point, about 55%. Seems like most coins are going to be about 50 to 55% is the most common retracement size at this point. 5-minute overbought, marked a temporary top. We'll keep an eye on 15. Actually, 15-minute got overbought as well. But this is definitely one of the better bounces. Because again, Bitcoin just dropped to a lower low and CRV didn't come close. So I know CRV BTC has a big bounce underway as well. And its bounce is stronger than CRV or CRV USDT. So that's a good sign for the CRV bulls. CHZ is holding on real well. We're looking for a daily high or low. It's in its own world, it looks like. Hourly oversold conditions didn't mark the bottom, but we didn't drop much further. We are just looking for a 4-hour lower high on this bounce, anything under 23. And if bears confirm we lost the 4-hour uptrend, and if we now confirm a 4-hour downtrend, then the pullback on the daily will be significant to create the space to then look for a daily lower high. At this point in time, the daily bull flag is still on the table. If this were our bottom, this could be a daily bull flag. So whether or not the bears are able to confirm a 4-hour downtrend from here is key. Would I be looking for a daily high or low in ETH? For me, I consider it a daily downtrend. And again, it's just because we know weekly consolidation was on the table as shaping up and likely with those rising wedges and just the fact that we bounced 100% plus with no weekly consolidation. So when I see this pullback and a bounce off daily EMA 12 and a move back towards the high and then another low, it happened in the same candle. And some people will look at that and say, man, it's the same candle, it doesn't count for me. For me, with the backdrop of the weekly time frame and knowing the bigger picture, that counts for me as a daily downtrend. We set a higher low, we had a bounce back towards the highs, and granted, it wasn't a confirmed 4-hour uptrend, it was very close. But seeing what the sector is doing, knowing that weekly consolidation is underway for 95% of coins, I consider that a lower high and lower low. And again, it's definitely a bit, this is one of those scenarios, and there's a bunch of them where it's up to the individual trader, the individual technical analyst, these little gray areas where, it's not cut and dry every single time. It's not black and white. And if you could also look at that candle and say, man, it's not clear enough for me, I'm going to the 2-day. And I would say, yeah, we're in a 2-day uptrend. I would agree with you there. So it all depends on you as the individual. But for me, I'm treating it like everything's in a daily downtrend in crypto right now. Matic rolled over. Tons of space for the daily lower high. Next bounce. Weekly retracement is one of the healthier sizes at the moment. Again, anything less than 50% versus anything more than 50% can be a distinguisher right now. And it's still 382. 4-hour bounce is underway. Still a possible bear flag. Watching EMA 12 resistance. Watching how much 4-hour bounce follow through we get. And cooling off. We are cooling off RSI levels. So some of these names soon will not be oversold on any time frame soon. If we get a little bit more upside in Matic, the 4-hour RSI is going to be back to 30, and we won't be oversold on any time frames, which means prepare for a possible another leg down. GME a bounce, it's not really much, well, nice end of day gains, but bigger picture, a whole lot of work to do there. Does the market price base on the little bit of Bitcoin that's on exchanges? There are more and more being held off exchanges. Explain how this works. It's all supply and demand. So you can say that the more and more that are being held off exchange, it decreases the amount of supply of coins, and that makes sense. But the price is the price is the price. And the price is determined by trading and the trading that is done on the exchanges. So just think of it as houses as well. If there's a ton of houses on the market, prices are going to drop because there's a lot of supply. And if not a lot of people are selling their house, then the prices are going to increase because there's more demand than supply. So does the market price based on a little bit of Bitcoin that's on exchanges? Yes. That is what does it. Just did Matic. I wouldn't say CHZ is increasing bull volume on the daily. You have to zoom in. And a lot of that is bear volume from that pullback. A lot of it is bull volume as well. But I would say it's a pretty even split of the daily volume between bull and bear. So I don't look at that and say, that's a bunch of bull volume. I say, there's definitely some solid bull volume buying that dip. But I would not say that's bull volume for the daily candle. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. It's Friday. Was CGC being bearish yesterday? Any clue to Bitcoin being bearish today? No, not for me. Not enough of a relationship like that. All right, last one, Theta. Big weekly. I mean, this is a monthly bear flag. Because you change the weekly trend with no follow through straight into a big pullback. And the bulls have a ton of work to do to prove to us that that is not a monthly bear flag. Very significant retracement. 95-cent bounce to 71-cent bounce. We're down 50 cents. Yeah, we've retraced well over 50% of that. That's definitely one of the weaker coins out there. Wasn't it the first one to confirm the daily downtrend? Yeah, this was nice and clear. This daily downtrend. Lower high, lower low. Most coins just dropped. This was, come get it, bears. Come get this lower high. That was much easier to short, in my opinion. And it was also probably a little 4-hour rising wedge. I mean, just look at that wall of resistance. All right, I appreciate you all tuning in. Thanks for the likes. We're at 98. Let's get that up to 111. So we're looking for 4-hour lower highs to be the result of the next bounce. Bulls have to change 4-hour trends for any kind of follow through. The bears are confident. You're going to see them all over social media. They have every right to be confident because they have full short-term control. The broader stock market has not started weekly consolidation yet. We're on the verge of it right now. But if we see more red next week in the broader stock market, and if BTC divided by NASDAQ hits fresh lows, Bitcoin's going to be quickly approaching 17. So prepare for all scenarios. Have a game plan for all these scenarios. And again, if I were forced to choose, I'm watching for a Bitcoin fresh low without a ton of follow through, and Ethereum and Binance and the stronger coins setting weekly higher lows. But that can change in a day. And I'll certainly keep you posted on what I feel most probable scenarios are into next week. Have a great weekend. Have some fun. Do a good thing while you're having some fun.